Back to inverted realities setup, where he used a toroidal inductor. We're looking down from the top, so the wires are wound around this way, and he has a loop of wire which comes to two, I'll just draw resistors here instead of the good old American squiggly line, and one of them is 100 ohms and the other one is 1000 ohms. And of course he has an alternating current going to this toroidal coil, and he has this loop of wire going through there. So now, back up to what I discovered, we know that the EMF only exists, or at least appears to only exist in there. So this circuit should act as if that's where the EMF is. So what I'm going to do is draw another circuit over here, because we can model that with a battery. Of course, this is going to be alternating current, but we can still model that with a battery. So whatever voltage we get, we can measure here. I'll put the 100 ohm resistor here and the 1K here. So he measures the voltage at different places. So let's start out his original. He measured the voltage between there and there. And he got 7.3 millivolts, AC of course. And then he measured the voltage over here. He's using the dual trace oscilloscope. I'm just representing with voltmeters. And over there, he got 73 millivolts. Actually, a little more, 73.7, I think. 7.31 and 73.7. We're going to have some rounding here, but we'll see what's going on. And so he shows that we have two different readings, which is, well, if we put a voltmeter here and a voltmeter here, what do we expect? Well, we expect the voltage here with 10 times the resistance, series circuit now. So the current has to be same everywhere. So if we have the same current and the series circuit and we have 10 times the resistance, we should have 10 times the voltage. So let's say we have 7.3 millivolts. Well, we should expect 73 millivolts there. That works just fine. But then he takes the oscilloscope and measures between here and here. What are we going to expect there? Well, we have how much resistance? 0 ohms. Now, important thing here is, and this comes up later, Ohm's law cannot be applied to the seat of electromotive force. In other words, you can't apply Ohm's law where electromotive force is being created, which is right here or here in this case. At least it appears to only be there in this case. So Ohm's law applies when we take an external voltage and apply it to a circuit, not to a circuit that's creating its own voltage. So is this creating its own voltage out here? Well, this circuit, the only EMF is inside the battery. So there is no voltage being created there. It's 0 ohms. And so we expect a voltmeter to read 0 volts. Now, if we go back to the fundamentals, I've gone over this ad infinitum in my classes. You can look in the description for the classes about Kirchhoff's voltage law and series circuits and everything we can expect. We are not going to expect to see any voltage across that. We never expect to see voltage across the wires when we look at these circuits because we always assume that they're 0 ohms. So that's exactly what's to be expected. So he says that this is unexpected. Why? Because he is considering this to be part of a transformer. Let me draw what he drew. He draws his circuit like this, which is legitimate because we have a wire, it has inductance, so we can draw it as a coil. And he's assuming that we have this situation here where our coil of wire is an open, long inductor, and therefore our E field is going to surround the entire loop, causing current to flow. And so this acts as the secondary of a transformer, and so does that one. So we have two secondaries of the transformer. Don't need to get too deep into that. I do in other places. And so under that condition, we would expect some voltage across there. But that's not the situation we have, because I can leave that loop there, But the only place we have induction is over here because the primary is only affecting this part of the loop. So the toroidal coil is the primary of our transformer, and it's only affecting this area right in here. So we have our EMF here, but not over here. So I should expect to read 0 volts. So he's surprised that he only got 0 volts. I think that's exactly what we should see. Then he goes on to measure between here and here. And he says this is illegitimate because the voltmeter is now part of the loop. Well, the voltmeter is part of the loop here and part of the loop there and part of the loop there too. If we did have our open inductor or long inductor in the middle, that would be true, but it's not. We have a toroidal inductor where the only EMF is in the inductor. Go back to this again. We have EMF all around with the inductor like that, but now we only have EMF in there. We are now putting the voltmeter across our source of EMF. And what do we expect to read? Well, let's take a look and see what we expect. 7.3 millivolts, 73 millivolts. It should be about 80.3 millivolts. And if we look at his measurements, he's actually getting something like 73.5 or 73.7. It kind of moves around, which we expect. Over here, he's getting 7.31 or 2 or 3. So we should expect this to be somewhere around 81 millivolts, give or take half a volt or more. Let's just call it 81 millivolts. That's just about perfect. 73.7, 7.3 comes out to 81 millivolts. So what are we going to expect there? What did he find? I think it was 82 millivolts. Exactly what we'd expect to find there. He says that's an illegitimate measurement because now the voltmeter is part of the secondary loop. But in reality, it would be everywhere if that was the case. But it's not because the EMF is only in there. So that's a perfectly legitimate measurement. And I will guarantee you that he had his voltages, his 73 millivolts and his 7.3 millivolts. I'll guarantee you that 83 millivolts or 82 millivolts was 180 degrees out of phase with the other two, which means we had plus to minus there. What are we going to expect? Our current's flowing this way, so we're going to get our higher voltage where the conventional current enters the resistor and the lower voltage where it exits. Higher where it enters. Remember, our current is flowing in that direction. Lower where it exits. And so notice that the polarity of this battery is opposing the polarity of the resistors. So we start with 81 millivolts, remove 73.7, subtract 7.3, we're down to 0, and that satisfies Kirchhoff's voltage law. Doing it with AC, we have 73 millivolts. We add 7.3 millivolts to give us 80-ish. I'll just make this 80 just to make the math work. And we would expect that to be 180 degrees out of phase, which I guarantee you it will be. So actually, even though he says this violates Kirchhoff's voltage law because he gets 0 volts here, that's exactly what we expect there. There is no EMF out there. It's not the secondary of a transformer. The only EMF we should expect would be in here. So he's making the assumption that we're going to have EMF all around there, which is the assumption I made until I experimentally found that it doesn't work that way. And whatever's actually going on, it acts as if the EMF is only in here. So it acts like there's a battery here, resistor, wire, resistor, and so it acts like this is our circuit over here. We have a battery, a resistor, 0 ohm wire, another resistor, and everything satisfies Kirchhoff's voltage law. Now, remember when I did my original video, if you have seen it, that I said, let's put our toroid here, there's our wire going through, that measuring this and proving that my EMF is only in here is going to be impossible with anything I've got, because if I measure between here and here, I'm simply going to measure the total EMF. We already saw that. So whatever voltage that is. And if I try to measure without going on both sides. So inverted reality said we can't measure that way. So what he did is he put a clip lead over here, ran it through, and then put the voltmeter over here. So there's his oscilloscope, and he ran the lead through there to get a, quote, legitimate measurement. But what did I say? Let's put these wires in here. We're going to get an EMF positive to negative there, and another EMF positive to negative there. So our loop goes negative to positive, positive to negative. They're going to cancel each other out. So I'm going to expect to see 0 volts. And he made that measurement, and that's exactly what he got, was 0 volts. So, like I said in the original video, it appears that all the EMF is in here, and there's no real way to prove that, because if we measure this way, we see the full EMF of the whole circuit. If we try to measure that way, we're going to cancel it out, and we can't measure it. So the bottom line is, if I get the clutter out of the way here, we're looking at our toroidal transformer here. Let me draw my little dotted lines here so we know there's a little hole going through there. And I'll draw a dotted line for our little loop there. Let's get the electromotive force out of the way so we can see our drawing a little better. So there's our loop going through. So once again, I'll just model it as a battery because it just is easier to wrap our minds around, I think. So a DC circuit, 80, we'll just call it 80 millivolts just to keep the math easy. 80 millivolts, 100 ohms, 1K. And we found that over here we had roughly 7 millivolts. And over here we had roughly 73 millivolts. And those add up to the 80 millivolts. So Kirchhoff's voltage law is satisfied. And understanding how the circuit works, we can see that we can predict exactly what that's going to do. Now, one last thing about what's going on in here. A YouTuber named Dirk van Merveen, if I mangled that not too badly, commented on Inverted Reality's video and said you only have induction on this part of the wire, nowhere else in the circuit. Now, what kind of authority is he? Nobody. But somewhere, somebody got the same idea I discovered, is that it appears, and may be true, that all of the EMF is inside the part of the wire that is inside the toroid. Did he find that somewhere in a book on electromagnetism? I have no idea. But at least somebody has that idea. So bottom line is, it appears that all of the EMF is right there. So we can treat that as a source of EMF, make it alternating current. I'll put a little E here. And then whatever else goes on outside is the rest of the circuit. Don't have much else to say about that, other than if you understand how things work, or at least how to model things, you can make accurate predictions. And don't get sidetracked by the red herrings where people are making mistakes. He assumed that there was EMF out here, but he didn't measure any. He assumed that the voltage that he did measure at the bottom was illegitimate, and therefore concluded that Kirchhoff's voltage law was incorrect in this case. However, if we understand how the toroidal inductor is working, we can see that we don't expect any voltage out here, and we expect all of it over here. And his illegitimate measurement is actually quite legitimate, and this just simply acts like any other series circuit. So I think I'm finished with this particular topic. I'm probably going to make another video that simply consolidates all the stuff that I've put in the previous videos, because I have too many of them about this topic. Now that I've done all this research, I can put it all into one nice tidy video and retire the rest of them. But otherwise, I think we're done with Kirchhoff's voltage law and changing magnetic fields. It does hold. So I hope you found this useful and informative, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you want to learn electronics technology, you can take my free course at vocademy.net. A big thank you to my patrons. I could not make these videos, and I could not run Vocademy without your support. To help me put these videos online, go to patreon.com/Vocademy and pledge your support, or look in the link below for how to give a one-time donation. And a big thanks to my patrons for making this possible, and thanks to everyone for watching.